Hi, I'm Duncan, and I'd like to welcome you to my latest YouTube channel feature. Today, I'm talking about one of my favourite movies of all time, the 1957 movie Night of the Demon, which was made by, I believe, Columbia and was directed by Jacques Tourneur. And it stars Dana Andrews. Uh, I think it's Peggy Cummings, uh, Niles McGuinness, Brian Wilde, and Atheni Sailor. Um, the film was released in America under the title Curse of the Demon, with about 15 minutes of cuts to it. So it's a much faster movie in the States, but the bits they cut out are little gems that would have been much better to keep in. The movie, as I say, was made in black and white in 1957 and aimed very much at the teenage market at the time. Jacques Tourneur had been was a marvelous director, and he'd scored very heavily several times, probably the most prominent being Val Lewton's Cat People, which was produced by Val Lewton, and he directed the movie. Very atmospheric, and does send a shiver down your spine. Now, during the production of this movie, Jacques Tourneur had a serious argument with the film studio. He didn't want a monster or creature to be seen in the movie. He felt it was much more powerful if the monster or creature was just behind you somewhere, perhaps in the corner of your eye. But he believed that if you actually saw it, it would break the suspense. But because the film was aimed at the teenage market, the studio, I think, quite can see where they were coming from, said, no, we must have a monster that can be seen. Otherwise, the teenagers are going to feel let down. So what happened was Jacques Tourneur left the movie before it was completed, although I think none of his atmospheric tension was damaged or compromised in the film. I think they just put in the creature when they wanted to. It's as I say, it's fabulously directed, and everyone in the movie is absolutely wonderful. The film starts off with a guy called Professor Harrington, who's played by an actor called Maurice Denham. He's been trying to expose Dr. Julian, I think it's Carswell, as a fraud who says that he has powers of the occult, and what happens is that he contacts. Professor Harrington contacts Dr. Julian Creswell and says, "Look, I don't believe that you are a fraud." But unfortunately, he doesn't live very long. And then it's basically his daughter, Joanna Harrington, and Dr. John Holden, who's played by Dana Andrews. They meet on an aeroplane coming over to Britain, and they basically make friends, and they work together to against Julian Carswell, to try and prove him as a fraud. But unfortunately, it seems he's everything but a fraud. There are some wonderful lines when the John Holden and Joanna Harrington arrive in Britain at the airport, and somebody says to them, "Oh, go easy on our ghosts. We're rather, as English people, we're rather fond of them." And he said, "Oh, the doctor says something like, oh, my best friends are ghosts." We have a wonderful Mrs. Carswell, Dr. Julian Carswell's mother, is played by Atheni Sailor. She's absolutely wonderful. She's a lovely person in the film. And of course, her heart is breaking because she sees her son getting involved in deeper and deeper and deeper into this evil, and there's nothing she can do to help. She was a wonderful actress, Atheni Sailor. She lived to a ripe old age. When she was 99, she appeared on Wogan with my boss, my then boss, James Furman, who was secretary of the British Board of Film Classification. We'd made a big splash because of the film The Last Temptation of Christ, and Jim had been invited on to Wogan, and he has a connection with Atheni Sailor. And when she was interviewed, James and Atheni were both on the stage at the time. James had his bit, and Atheni said she had never said okay, she'd never driven, and she'd never worn trousers. And she recited a little poem, which was brilliant. And then James told an anecdote of how he'd worked with her many years before when he was a humble studio assistant for a television play. And Athene Sales was in it. And what he had to do is he had to put coloured tape on the floor during rehearsals, which corresponded to, each colour responded to a certain actor or actress. And it was to basically show them where they could move because the set was so claustrophobic and small. And when James was sticking the coloured sellotape on the floor, he faced his eye vision came up, and he saw these two massive great feet standing in front of him. And he looked up, and there was Athene Sailor looking straight down at him. And James, telling the story, even did her voice and said, I looked up to see her, Athene looking straight down at me, and she said to me, "Young man, if this is television, I think your whole business is completely absurd." And the whole audience roared with laughter. And then James put his hand up to say, and she was right. She lived to be 101, so she lived 2 years after the Wogan interview. But she's a greatly loved actress. She was in films and British films for years. As I say, we've also got a marvellous part in the movie, played by a small part played by Brian Wilde. Now, Brian became a household name in the 1970s when he played the kindly Mr. Barraclough in Porridge with Ronnie Barker, Richard Beckinsale, and Fulton Mackay, sorry. And he has a part in the movie where he is basically put under hypnosis because he's been in a trance for months, and they're trying to help him by breaking the spell that's on him or whatever it is. And I'm not going to tell you what happens, but he does the acting of his career in that sequence. Absolutely brilliant. I think the character's name was Rand Hobart. The movie, we do see the demon, and I've got the special deluxe Blu-ray of it, and this is what the demon looks like in the film. Not the kind of person you'd like your daughter to bring home for tea, and of course you don't quite see him like that. The camera moves quite a lot, so you don't get a massively good look at him, and it's better that way. I think it's more effective that way. But I wouldn't like to meet him on a dark night, I have to say. I don't want to spoil it by giving too much of the plot away, but you do like pretty much all the characters, including Julian Carswell. He can be 1 minute he can be a clown entertaining at a children's party. the next minute he can be dabbling in stuff that you would rather leave alone. He's charming the whole way through the film. Um, and a very fine. He's, if you can't picture him, he's the guy who played Zeus in Ray Harryhausen's Jason and the Argonauts, and he's done loads and loads of fantastic performances. The movie, I don't believe, was a smash hit. It deserved better, but maybe it was based on the story by by M.R. James, Casting the Runes. It keeps the basic plot of that, but it's very, very different. I think it's it's a picture that I believe is very entertaining in the right way. It's not graphic. I have been asked by some people, as a practicing Christian, why do I watch material like that? Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's just like Harry Potter. It's just like loads of films. It's good versus evil, and the message behind the film is don't get involved in stuff that you don't understand, and because they are not skeptics. Dr. Holden and Joanna Harrington, they're not skeptics as the film progresses. But it's a great movie, and one of my favourite movies of all time. I think it's great it was made in black and white. It has been remade, I think in the 1980s. I haven't seen the remake, so I can't comment on it. But obviously, if a film is being remade, it must be that the original was pretty flippin' good, because otherwise, why remake it? So do catch it. I think you can get it still on Blu-ray and DVD. I think you get both versions: the American print, which of course is Curse of the Demon, and the British print, which is Night of the Demon. I prefer the longer version, but then I prefer that because I think the bits that were taken out were not things that were going to slow the picture down anyway. So I don't understand why they couldn't have just released it in the same print. But mine is not to question. But a great movie, and if you enjoyed watching this, then please take the like button. I'd love you to subscribe if you haven't done so. If you want to send this to a friend, please do so. But as I say, a great movie to watch. I think in the UK, Talking Pictures show it quite regularly. Sure, it's easy to track down. Anyhow, you look after yourselves, and I'll see you all soon. God bless.